Today, I am chatting with Sabrina, and she is sharing her incredibly personal story with infertility and what her child free life looks like right now.
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and just some of the things that you enjoy.
I am a licensed massage therapist, a speaker. I'm very passionate about health and wellness. And I'm also an introvert, or what I call myself now is a recovering introvert. So, my husband and I have been married 15 years as of July. And yeah, I mean, we tried to have kids and it just didn't work out. And so we realized that it's not in our plan or God's plan for us to have children. I told Hannah before we signed on that it's very fitting that I'm in my niece's room because I'm helping out my sister this weekend. She's out of town for a training. My sister has two boys and a girl. I do have two nieces and two nephews. My sister-in-law also has a daughter. So I'm just really blessed to be a part of their life. And, if I had my own kids, it wouldn't be the same because I wouldn't be able to just be like, okay, I'm just going to pick up and leave and go and take care of the kids.
Yeah.
So it's really awesome that, that I get to spend this much time with my nieces and nephews.
I think it's such a big perk getting to be the auntie and uncle. I actually spent some
Mhm.
time with my niece and nephew last night, and they were just so excited that I was coming
Yeah.
over. And we did a little picnic dinner together. And it's just like they love those little things, and you feel like you have a really great time. But then in the evening, when it's like the bedtime routine starts, I'm like, okay, and I'm leaving now.
Yeah. Well, actually, I spent the night last night.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I was actually, mom last night.
Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit about your child free journey because yours has obviously been different than most of us that are just sort of like, we don't want kids and that's our journey. So
Yeah.
take me back a little bit, as much as you feel comfortable sharing how that kind of all started for you when you and your husband were trying to have children.
Like most people when you're growing up, or especially girls, when we're younger, we're like, oh, we just want to be pregnant, we want to be a mom, we want to be, a good wife, have a perfect life. And so I remember playing house with my sisters and be like, okay, we put a pillow under our shirts and be like, oh, I'm pregnant. And then all of a sudden we have this baby, like a little toy baby. And so, yeah, I mean, like as a kid, I totally thought I was going to get married to this wonderful man and have a baby or babies and, just be a mom. And then, of course, once we got married and we took some time to travel,
Mhm.
and then once we decided to start having kids, we started the process and it wasn't happening. So, we tried for probably, I don't know, maybe 8 months. And then at that point, we decided to discuss like, should we keep trying? Should we seek help? And so, we sought out the help that we needed, and we started going and getting tested for fertility,
Mhm.
both of us, and we figured out our issues and move forward. But of course, then there were some bumps in the road, like my husband lost his job and we lost insurance, so we had to put that all on hold. And that was about 6 months that we had to put it on hold. And once he got insurance again, then we were able to start the process again.
Mhm.
That was probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years of a process, because my husband wasn't able to give me the children that I thought that we would be able to just have it naturally.
Right. Yeah.
But so we had to go through a donor.
Okay.
And so we went through the whole donor process of picking all the characteristics out and then choosing the donor. And
Mhm.
then I went for insemination process. I didn't want to do the whole IVF, just wanted to go through basically the easiest way to get pregnant.
Right.
Not that it's easy in any means, because it was very emotionally, physically, it was financially taxing on us. So I went through the process of artificial insemination with a
Okay.
donor, and there was 3 different times. And so, obviously you have to wait until it's the right time of the month
Mhm.
to get inseminated.
Mhm.
And we actually didn't tell our family that we were doing it at the time.
Okay.
So because we didn't want anyone to be like, oh, I'm excited for you. So the two of us
Right.
just went through it on our own.
Right.
And since it was a new job for my husband, he couldn't just take days off. We live in the western suburbs of Chicago, so I had to go all the way into the city for each insemination.
Mm.
I'd have to get up really early,
Mhm.
drive downtown, and that was stressful enough because I'm just not a city girl.
Yeah, I've been to Chicago. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and then of course it's pricey because then you have to pay for parking, you
Yep.
have to get to the building. And so it's just a very long, drawn out process. And
Mhm.
we did it all by ourselves. And then, of course, the
Mm.
day of, I was all alone. So, yeah, I went through the process 3 times, and my husband said he would support me no matter what. He said to me, I didn't get married to have a family.
Mm.
I married you for you.
That's
And
really sweet. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so if we had the children, yes, it would just be a bonus to have a beautiful family to love and care for. But that wasn't the deal breaker. Where I know some people that has been the deal breaker. If you can't have kids, they want to find someone else. I desperately wanted to be a mother, but I also knew that my sister had kids at the time. My sister-in-law had a daughter, and all of my friends had kids. And of
Mm.
course, that sort of made it worse for me at the
Right.
time. But then after the third insemination failed, I physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically just couldn't do it anymore. And I remember just coming home that day and after the phone call and feeling just so down. And actually, through the whole process, I felt like there was death, like I had experienced the whole loss of a loved one, even though I had no loss of a loved one. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
just it was just like an emptiness in me. And I felt like I was walking around just in a fog, in a daze. So after I got that call that we had that third insemination that failed, I went to my husband and I said, I just can't do it anymore. And, he was fully supportive. Like if I did change my mind and I wanted to go back at some point, he would be there. And he'd say,
Mhm.
okay, let's dive in and do it all over again.
That just sounds like such a hard journey.
Yeah.
And I'm sure before you started, you didn't even realize how much involvement there was going to be, not just financially, but just like what that does to your emotions. When you ultimately made that choice that you were just like, okay, we're going to set this aside and we're just going to be child free. Did you feel like that was just sort of a natural progression after having tried 3 times and it just wasn't working out, that you were just like, okay, we're done, and that was easy for you? Or did you find that was actually really hard to kind of make that call?
It was kind of an easy yet challenging. It's kind of hard to
Mm.
explain because like in my heart I knew I was done. I didn't know if in the future I would feel the need to go back and do it again or try again, but I knew at that point I couldn't get the failure call again.
Mhm.
Like get my hopes up,
Yeah.
have all these things, take all the steps, get all the days right, and then make the appointments, go downtown, go through the process, sit there for an hour, and then
Mhm.
drive home and then wait in anticipation. And then you get the phone call.
Yeah.
And so I knew at that point I couldn't go on. It was sort of easy, sort of not.
Because it
Mhm.
kind of closes the door, right? Like you said, you could always go back
Yeah.
at some point if you want to, but you're kind of closing that door on something that is like a hard call to make, but yet you also know for your own kind of mental health that there has to be a point where that constant being disappointed has to stop, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah. And there
go
was
ahead.
also, like my husband and I had talked about, and it might sound bad to say this, but it's the truth. And he also kept saying, how much do you want to keep playing God? I don't knock anyone that's gone through fertility or
Mhm.
any kind of, you know, um process like we did, even through insemination, of trying to have a child, because it's such a beautiful process when you actually do get pregnant, and they're such a gift once they arrive. But he kept saying, what if for some strange reason we spent all this time and all this emotion, all this money to get pregnant and have a child, and then what if something was wrong with him or her? And I just kept feeling like if that did happen, not only would I feel bad for the child, I'd feel, kind of like, why did we why did we go through all this to to do that? And
Right.
and I'm not saying anything bad about, children that have, some issues or whatever, but I just knew that this process was tough enough to go through, that I didn't want the rest of my lifetime to be tougher.
It sounds like your husband was super supportive through all of this.
Yeah.
That's so important to have in a partner, because it's hard enough when you're making the choice, right? To, are we going to
Yeah.
pursue this or are we not? And then you were, sounds like, alone for most of it, having to make the drive and be in the room by yourself. And I know, just anytime I go through something, I'm always like, want my husband right there, because,
Oh,
it
yeah.
just gives you that little bit of support. So I imagine the time that you get to spend with your nieces really helps kind of almost like fill that part of you that really wanted to be a mom, but you get to still give back. It's just in a different way now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true.
I'm assuming you eventually told your family that you had been on this journey. And
Mm-hmm.
what was their reaction to that?
It was really tough because, like, I think I told my parents first, then I told my sisters, then we told my in-laws. And, obviously everyone was really sad, but they were very supportive too.
Mhm, mhm.
And, of course it was like, well, why didn't you tell us through the like we could have been here for you. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it was our decision ultimately
Yeah.
to do it, whether we wanted to involve people or not. And yeah, it was super hard to do it alone. And like you said, you would love to have your husband there whenever you have something, a hard decision, or,
Mhm.
going to a medical appointment. It's always nice to have someone there, but it was just, I didn't want to build up the excitement and then completely ruin everyone's feelings and emotions. Like, at least we went through this alone, and then we could, when we were ready, we were able to sit them down and talk to them. And it wasn't like the whole buildup and then let down.
You feel like you're disappointing yourself and your husband. Now you have your whole family that you feel like you're disappointing. So, I
Yes.
mean, it makes sense that you just kind of kept that to yourself until you were at the place where you were ready to share that.
Right. Yes, exactly. So yeah, it was a tough decision and, tough conversations, but we're all adults and we had to have those conversations. And I think I even told my older sister, because I believe she had 3 kids at the time. I think I remember saying, like, I think at this point, since we decided we're not having kids, that I can just be there for you whenever you need it. I'm happy to do this now for her.
You kind
Yeah.
of have to find beauty in some of the really tough things that you go through in life, right? Because there's so many things that we don't get to control in life. It gives you, I think, maybe a very different perspective on being child free than someone like me who's just made the choice, like, I'm just going to not have kids. So do
Yes.
you refer to yourself as childless or child free?
Um, and we've actually used the hashtag happily married, no kids. So I
Okay.
don't really, I don't know. I've never actually thought about that. I guess childless,
Mhm.
but I guess I've never really considered the two words as options. I've just put the hashtag of, happily married, no kids. And that's not to hurt anyone's feelings. It's
Right.
just that we are happily married with no kids. We get to travel whenever we want
Yeah.
and go on date nights whenever we want.
Those are amazing.
Yeah.
No babysitter needed.
No, except for my plants, we're
Yeah,
plant parents.
that's right. Do you feel like it's sort of a closed book in your mind? Like, you sound like you are happy where you're at, but do you feel like there's still something inside you that is like, maybe I do kind of want to pursue this? Or are you just like, no, I'm happy, I'm done, this is where we're at?
Yeah, this is where we're at. We're very happy with our decision.
Mhm.
And, like I said, I mean, it's just it allows us to be able to give my sister and my other niece the energy and the time. And of course, yeah, we can't just drop our lives to
Right.
watch the kids or be
Yeah.
with them or pick them up at any time, especially through the pandemic and all that nonsense of homeschooling. I just knew it was the right thing for us.
You get some like life events that happen every so often that really confirm, right? Like, okay, yeah, no, this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
Are you quite open in your discussion? Because obviously, we get to an age where people start, so I'm talking maybe with like your clients that you see, or just people that aren't super close to you, that don't really know your story, that will make comments like, oh, are you ever going to have babies? Or when are you going to get pregnant? How do you answer that?
I usually say we did try to have children, but it didn't work out for us. It wasn't in the cards, or
Mhm,
however I decide to word it. And if I know the person a little more, then
mhm.
I will go into a very basic story, especially if it's a client I'm working on them, or, giving them a massage. I don't want to go into details but
For
I have
sure.
no problem sharing the story now. I can share it without getting emotional. I mean, I do get a little emotional inside. The last time I shared my story for a ministry that I'm a part of,
Mhm.
I wrote kind of like a long form poem, I guess you could call it.
Okay.
And I was reading it to my husband before I actually presented it.
Mhm.
And both times, when I was practicing it with him and on
Mhm.
the call, I got emotional with it. And I think that's just real life,
Yeah.
because it's like, I remember you can take yourself back to the feelings of the emotions that you were feeling, and they were
Of
so
course.
deep seated.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when you speak those words, that emotion comes up, but that's okay
Yeah.
because it's real life.
Yeah. And it's such a personal part of who you are and your journey, right? And it's like, it's when you share that with people, you're making yourself vulnerable in a way that most women will not make themselves vulnerable, either because it's not our story or because, people don't want to say anything. It's very private. So
Right.
I just want to say thank you so much for being open to share, because I know that
Yeah.
there are people who watch my content and they'll send me messages about, infertility and some of their journeys and things that they've gone on. And I find it really hard because I can't relate. I don't know what that's like. So I'm so
Mhm.
glad that you were willing to come on here and share your story, because I know that is really going to touch a lot of people.
Good. Yes. And that's why when I saw your information on Instagram, I connected with you because I wanted to hear your side of it
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I did, we don't have kids, and but we went through the whole process of trying and
Mhm.
to get the different perspective. If I can just help one woman to speak up and share her story, or even just to share it with one-on-one with me or someone else that has gone through the experience,
Mhm.
that can help her healing journey too.
Yeah, that's so important. One thing that people have said to me is like, we don't feel like there's enough support for women who have gone through infertility, then made the choice to live without kids and be accepting of that. There
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't seem to be enough support out there. Do you kind of feel like that's been your story and your experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've seen very small bits and pieces of my friends' stories, like
Mhm.
they'll get married and, obviously the progression. You get
Yeah.
married and eventually you start having kids.
Yes.
And sometimes people are married for 10, 15, 20 years and you're like,
Yeah.
well, I guess they just decided not to have kids. And once in a while you'll see them post something about that. And,
Mhm.
I'll catch it and then I'll share a little piece of my story. Or
Mhm.
someone that's been married for 10 years and then all of a sudden they get pregnant and then they share their fertility story. We never thought we could have kids. We prayed for this day for so long, blah, blah, blah. And, I'll share a little piece of my story as well.
I think there's a piece of that that probably, I assume, is going to stay with people for their whole lives, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
there's always like you see babies now and you're like,
yeah.
oh, I never got that, like
Yeah.
loving a baby the way that a mom loves a baby. But
Hmm.
I can totally see this in my sister's kids. There's no like, I think I love them. I love these kids
Yeah.
and I would do
Yeah.
anything for them.
Yeah.
And the middle child, he struggles a little bit with like some anger issues. And this
Hmm.
morning he was just having a really tough time. I don't know if I handled it perfectly, but I just put my arms around him and I told him that he is worthy. I love him. We love him. He's smart. He's funny. He's, whatever. I don't even know what I said to him, but I just wanted him to know that he means the world to me. And, yes, I'm not a mom loving their child, but I'm an auntie that loves her nephews and nieces. And I just deeply love them. And so I do feel that.
And that's a special relationship that we get to have with nieces and
Yes.
nephews, right? And that's, again,
Yeah,
different than a parent. And kids
totally.
can benefit from both 100%, right?
Yep. That's so true.
Yeah. Do you find that people have heard your story and they still suggest that you should just get back in there and do it again?
I remember people giving the option of adoption,
Okay.
when it was
Yeah.
early on and we would tell our story about, the insemination and getting a donor. And they're like, well, what
Yes.
about adoption? And I just said, my husband never wanted to adopt. And I
Okay.
was okay with that
Right.
because, you don't know their backstory all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get to know their bloodline or whatever, but most of the time you don't. And my husband wasn't open to that story. So if the whole insemination process, it being part of me,
Mhm.
he was okay with. Yes, the man wasn't him,
Right.
but with it being in me and I'm a part of him, he was okay with that process, just not adoption because it wasn't a part of both of us. It's challenging because like I know children need to be adopted, but I also knew that it's a very long and drawn out process. And I don't know that I could have handled going through that at that point in my life. And I have my nieces and nephews. And so if ever we had to adopt them, those would be the first kids that I would adopt.
How long ago did all of this take place?
About 10 years ago.
As someone who is child free by choice, I'm not maybe always aware of the best thing to say to somebody when I get messages from people who have gone through infertility. What is something that you would appreciate hearing from someone who is child free by choice, something that you feel would be helpful or supportive?
I'd want to be comforted and knowing that, maybe there is hope, if someone tried and couldn't have kids for years and there is a little glimmer of hope, but also, really giving the energy, like we talked about, to the nieces, the nephews, your friends' children, and just really putting all your energy and all your focus on the other children around you, because like we've talked about too, it's a different relationship to be an aunt or an uncle than it is to be a mom or dad. So really just pour into those kids around you, because sometimes that could be a lifelong friendship that you create, or a trust that you can create with that child that the parent can't have.
I think I've noticed too with our nieces, some of them are adults now. And we've, been spending time with them since they were babies. And so your relationship definitely changes over the years with them. And that's actually kind of a cool thing to experience as an auntie. What is something you would like to say to people who have struggled with infertility?
Ooh, that's challenging. Well, I would just say really focus on yourself, instead of focusing so much on, trying to have a child. That's the one thing that you're going for right now. But really, if that is not happening for you, to really put the focus back on yourself, do some self-care. Not just like getting your hair and your nails done, just really even talking to someone professionally, getting help, reading some books or something that could really nourish your body, mind, and soul, because that could almost fill the void at the time, while you're going through the whole process.
Right.
And, I think what helped me through the whole process was going outside for walks in nature. Because I remember some days I would just be like so overwhelmed. I'd be crying. I'd put on my sunglasses, and I mean, I don't even know how fast or slow I was walking. I felt just like I was in mud or something. And I just it was so hard to move my body, but just being out in nature helped me to get through that time.
Yeah, nature is, I think it's actually quite healing.
Yes,
for people.
It is. And it was for me. Yeah. And journaling. I remember journaling, sitting on the balcony, just journaling and journaling and journaling, writing it out, because if you just keep it inside, it hurts.
Yeah. And how did you sort of make that transition from, okay, I'm closing this chapter and I'm going to find happiness by living a child-free life? What are some things that you started doing, maybe kind of more at the beginning of your journey, where you were like, hey, I can have fun. Yes, the hurt is still there, but I can actually enjoy life like just my husband and I.
Well, we decided that we would travel more. We would go on more dates, and we would just focus on strengthening our relationship. So that's what we did. We started traveling more, and, of course, then we'd have more time for our nieces and nephews. Yeah, just basically just strengthen our relationship, because there was nothing else to give our energy to. And we had money, so we decided to spend it on us instead of throwing it away to try and have children.
And I think being able to invest in your relationship with your spouse, I mean, it's so huge. It's so big. There's so many people that don't make it or that don't stay together, right? Especially going through something like that. Like, that's so deep and personal and hurtful for both of you in different ways, that when you get to spend time together and build a stronger relationship, I mean, that's probably just one of the most amazing things that you can have in life right now.
Totally. I want to heal a little bit more too, because I know
Yeah.
it through the whole process, there is more healing to be done. And every time I share, I heal a little bit
Mhm.
more. But I also want to reach out to those women that are still struggling out there and share their story and for them to heal more.
If people are watching this and they would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way that they can have a private conversation with you about what they're going through right now?
I think the best way is through my personal page on Facebook, Sabrina Schottenhamel.
Okay. It's so important to have community and to know that you are not alone. You're not the only person that's going through a thing and feeling a certain way.
Totally. Yeah. And please reach out because I'm happy to have a conversation with you and hear your story so that you can heal too.
I just want to say thank you so much for sharing and opening up and talking about something that's really personal that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about. I really appreciate your vulnerability.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity today too.
Yeah, you're so welcome.